But first, I have to ask you about some big items in the news, especially
Sure.
the National Security Agency spying scandal, for want of a better word. All this news that the U.S. Conducted surveillance on our own allies. Some of the documents posted by or leaked by Edward Snowden to the media indicate that these programs started in 2002. Why spy on an ally?
Jake, if there were such a program, it'd be classified and I couldn't talk about it. It'd be totally inappropriate. And I haven't been in the loop now, obviously, for more than 4 years. So it's just one of those subjects I couldn't discuss.
Without getting specific, on a theoretical basis, what is the interest of the United States in conducting surveillance on a country or a leader who is a clear ally of the United States?
I've got to go with the answer I've given you. Let me say this. We do have a fantastic intelligence capability worldwide against all kinds of potential issues and concerns. We are vulnerable, as was shown on 9/11, and you never know what you're going to need when you need it. And the fact is, we do collect a lot of intelligence, and without speaking about any particular target or group of targets, that intelligence capability is enormously important to the United States, to our conduct of foreign policy, to defense matters, to economic matters, and I'm a strong supporter of it.
Of all of it?
I'm a strong supporter of our generic capability to collect intelligence. I don't want to comment on any one particular controversy or piece of the programs.
The White House says that President Obama did not know about these spying programs on specific world leaders, especially German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Obviously, you're not a member of the Obama administration, but do you find that credible? Could it be that there would be surveillance programs of that type that President Obama would not know about?
Jake, I'm not going to get into the specifics. It would be inappropriate. If there were such a program, I couldn't talk about it. It'd be classified.
Do you think the Snowden leaks have hurt America's ability to defend itself?
I do. I think he's a traitor. I hope we can catch him at some point, and that he receives the justice he deserves.
How have they hurt the United States? I think there are a lot of people, especially in the media or the civil libertarian community, who think it's good that the American people now know of all the surveillance that is being conducted purportedly to protect us.
Well, the problem I have with Snowden is he had access to classified information. He violated the conditions under which he got those. He's a traitor, pure and simple. And I don't think you can judge him any other way. There's some people want to say, well, he's a whistleblower. He's no whistleblower. He's done enormous damage to the United States by talking about sources and methods and the way we collect intelligence. And that's a violation of the law.
President Obama has said, and I think you've said along the lines of, by the time the decisions get to the White House, they're not the easy decisions, they're the tough decisions. The easy ones have been made long before they get to the White House. They think the question of overreach, whether it's massive data mining or surveillance of allies, or in your cases, black sites or enhanced interrogation techniques, what others believe to be torture. How do you make a cost-benefit analysis that this ultimately, not just in the short term, but the long term, will save more American lives than it risks costing?
Well, let's take some of the programs we have talked about and that have become public, such as the terror surveillance program that we set up in right after 9/11, or the enhanced interrogation techniques we used on Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of 9/11. In both those cases, we went to great lengths to make certain we'd work closely with the lawyers and the Justice Department to know where the line was. You can go this far and no further, so that we didn't violate any international commitments or obligations. So when people say torture, that may be their opinion, but with respect to the attorneys and the lawyers that are charged with reviewing what we do, it was not torture. I don't believe it was torture.
There are those who dispute it, that is what caused him to give the information. But even positing that it did, it has had tremendous propaganda value for the enemy.
Well, let's see, we're going to trade propaganda value for lives.
But can't propaganda value cost lives?
No, I think in this case, there are bound to be critics out there. There's no question but what it was controversial. It was the right thing to do. We looked at it very carefully. I was a chief advocate of it, helped get it all set up and established. I believe deeply in what we did. I think it was the right thing to do.
In the